Central London studio. We've got Lauren Southern, a commentator at Rebel Media. That's a conservative online magazine. Good afternoon to you both. Geoffrey Robinson, let's start with you. Is it time to take another look at the Second Amendment?
It's been time since the Second Amendment was passed. Of course, it's well overdue. I mean, how many more mass shootings do we need? How many more victims of gun violence do we need before the Republicans get off their ass, stop doing the work of the NRA, who is in the pocket of the gun manufacturers, and change the legislation to protect people? I mean, Paul Ryan, what a disgraceful jerk he's turning out to be. Last night, when he came onto the well of the House, he said that this sit-in was a publicity stunt. I mean, the man is completely tone-deaf, typical of the Republicans.
Lauren, what do you make of that? I mean, after all, the Second Amendment was written in a very different environment, in a very different era.
You know, I'm not a fan of Paul Ryan, but I do agree with him on this one. It is a publicity stunt. It is purely virtue signaling. Even the Democrats themselves, like Chris Murphy, have admitted that none of these amendments would have stopped the shooting in Orlando or in San Bernardino. Not one of them, even the ones presented by the Republicans. They wouldn't have done a thing. They are just bureaucratic, more laws. And in fact, some of them are very biased. Even the ACLU have said that the ones that include banning people from the terrorist watch list and the no-fly list are discriminating against people who have been through no due process whatsoever. That is the ACLU, who are certainly not NRA supporters, who are certainly not massive gun fans.
Yeah, Geoffrey, interesting point that, because that's something a lot of people have said, is if you're on a no-fly list, you shouldn't be able to own a gun. Lauren says otherwise.
No, Ms. Southern is completely wrong and tone-deaf like Mr. Ryan. Let me tell you about Ms. Southern. I love it that she comes to my country and preaches no gun laws when Miss Southern is a Canadian, where they have very, very strict gun laws and where the gun laws work. We in the United States have 50,000 gun deaths a year. Miss Southern in Canada has fewer than 310. So, Miss Southern, here's my advice to you. Go back to Canada, get the gun laws changed there and obliterated, and then come back on Sky and let us know how well that worked out for you.
Let's let Lauren Southern have a chance to respond to that. That's quite an accusation, Geoffrey. Lauren.
Oh, I would love for the gun laws to change in Canada. If I were an individual that were in America in a mass shooting, the first thing I would think is, I wish I had a gun on me. I wish I were able to defend myself. The gun is an equalizer. As an individual, if I were attacked, I would have many men who attacked me I couldn't outpower. I would want a gun on me to defend myself from rape, from being murdered. If I was in a mass shooting, I would be a sitting duck. As much as you can love and trust the government, they still have to make that call. They still have a time to get there. And if there were someone with a gun in the Orlando shooting or the Paris shooting, any of these places, these mass deaths could have been stopped. Even the Eagles of Death, the concert that was playing in Paris, the singers said that I wish there was someone in there with a gun so that this could have been stopped. I will try to change the laws in Canada, and I wish I were in the States right now, and maybe I'll go there someday so that I can have the right to defend myself from both people who want to attack me, do me harm, and from a tyrannical government.
Okay, it's a good point, but on the other hand...
no, it's not a good point. It's nonsense. It's utter crap. It's not a good point at all. It's fallacious nonsense. It's rhetoric. It doesn't make any sense.
I'm going to apologise for your language. We are, of course, on live TV, so let's just remember that when we're discussing
I know, and it's still crap.
Please explain to me how one of these amendments would have stopped the shooting in Orlando.
I will gladly explain what gun control does.
No, what the amendments that are being...
No, listen. Just listen. In your youthful high school exuberance, you are very naive. What gun violence does, what gun laws do is prevent gun violence. See, one of the things Miss Southern... It did? Really? There were guns in Orlando in the club.
There were tons of gun laws,
but there were guns in the club in Orlando. The guards were armed. Obviously, you've never carried a gun. Some of us who served in the U.S. military have carried a gun.
Okay, Geoffrey,
and I can tell you something.
Let's get back to the subject here.
Let me finish. When you have lots and lots of guns in a room, what you get is panic and more deaths. Miss Southern doesn't have a clue what she's talking about.
Okay, Geoffrey, less of the personal attacks, please. Let's keep it on this subject. Lauren Southern...
It is on the subject. She's talking nonsense.
But less of the personal attacks, please. Lauren Southern, just to change tack slightly here. Now, what we saw in Orlando, it was, frankly, the kind of assault weapon you don't need to defend yourself. There are over 3 million of those in ownership in the US. We don't need assault rifles like that, do you, to defend yourself? Surely the law should be changed.
The thing is, it's an equalizer, right? If the government has a weapon that they can use against the people, I mean, you can say, no, it's not, sir, but that's not an argument. You saw during the Chicago riots where you had Asian store owners defending their stores from being burnt down, and the only way they did that was with high caliber weapons, and they were one of the few peoples that didn't have their stores burned down. You saw it during in Ukraine when you had the government sniping their own people. The people who were disarmed, they were fighting with Molotovs against sniper rifles. You need to be able to defend yourself from a tyrannical government. And with most of America seemingly thinking that Trump is the new Adolf Hitler, I think that liberals would want to be arming themselves to defend themselves from a Fourth Reich.
Oh, utter nonsense.
Okay, Jeffrey, Jeffrey, the clock is against us. Let's just talk now about
let me
the
stick to the issue.
Okay.
Darshini, let me stick to the issue. For example, what Miss Southern neglects is that the overwhelming single group that suffers most from gun violence in America are women, battered women, women who are subject to domestic violence. Women suffering from domestic violence are 8 times more likely to be murdered by their partner if there are guns in the house. Over the past 25 years, more intimate partner homicides with guns have taken place than all the other deaths of weapons combined. I mean,
Jeffrey,
you know, it goes a lot further
Jeffrey,
than the no-fly list.
Are you suggesting banning handguns?
Okay, Jeffrey,
I'm suggesting taking handguns away from men who have domestic order restrictions against them, yes.
Jeffrey, just to interject there, you make some really strong statistical points there. But on the other hand, 8 years of an Obama administration, we haven't seen gun control being
Well, of course not,
tightened up.
because the Republicans will not
there?
bring it up. The Republicans refuse to bring it up because they're in the pocket of the NRA, and the NRA is in the pocket of the gun manufacturers.
Can
the
you explain
Republicans
to me?
instead have tried 300 and some odd times to obliterate Obamacare. They've never once put gun legislation into the House. They won't. They're afraid. The NRA has them in their pockets. They're puppets, and they're jerks.
Can you explain to me why in Chicago during Father's Day weekend, 13 people were killed, 53 were injured by guns when they have some of the strongest gun laws in America? Can you explain that to me?
They don't have strong gun laws in America because any idiot can buy a gun.
In Chicago.
Any idiot can buy a gun from a gun show or on the internet, and there are no
and they can buy it
background
illegally
checks.
as well when they're banned.
But back here
Not
in,
if.
back
Not
here
if,
in the UK.
not if you have background checks, and not if you have.
I'm saying they can buy it
strictly-
illegally.
No,
They can buy it illegally.
This
There's no
is
background checks when buying things illegally.
This is precisely why you and the Libertarian Party in Canada and the Libertarian Party in America have no credibility. You are completely disregarded as a
These are
political
personal
force.
attacks, sir. These are personal attacks,
Jeffrey, I think
not
that's a
arguments.
personal view, but let's just move back to the subject because the clock is against us. Now, we've all seen those pictures of Democratic politicians staging that sit-in. It is an election year. Are we going to see this being a focal point in this campaign in the year ahead, do you think? Lauren?
Sorry, I didn't hear that question.
I said we're looking at these pictures here of Democratic politicians staging that sit-in. Is this going to be a focal point of this year's election campaign?
I do think it will be a focal point. People are going to be focused on who can defend them and who is going to allow them to defend themselves as well. And I do think that you've seen the gay community as well. Massive gun sales among the LGBTQ community have been going on the past week since Orlando. I think you're going to see people more focused on anti-terrorism, which will be more on the pro-Trump side, and more people focused on their freedom to have weapons to defend themselves. Because unfortunately, the government couldn't stop those 49 people from being killed. Someone in there could have stopped it. And I do think that this will be a focal point. Gun sales have skyrocketed every time there's a mass shooting, every time there's a terrorist attack.
Lauren,
people are going to be focused
yes or
on the
no,
right.
Lauren, who makes gun control law in the US? Is it the government or the NRA?
It's the government.
Jeffrey?
Nonsense. It's the NRA, of course it is, because they've got all the money to make sure that there is no legislation passed. And the Republicans are such cowards, they won't go up against the NRA. They need the NRA money. The fact is, gun legislation works in Canada, Miss Southern. It does not work in America because there is none.
You know those two are very, very
facts.
different situations with very different
Lauren
populations.
Southern,
No, actually,
Jeffrey
they're not.
Robinson, you are never going to agree on this. We really appreciate you
Never.
both making your points, and we do apologise to viewers for some of the language used during the course
I
of our
don't
discussion.
apologise for my language at all.
But thank you all for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Elsewhere.
We will make America great again.